following are the words of Noel DiGirolamo, president of the Suffolk County Police Benevolent Association.
Police officers are already being targeted for assassination. Releasing their personal information to criminals will only further endanger them. Stand with law enforcement. Defend the police.
Your Island, live and local, with your host, Tom Shalero, on 103.9 LI News Radio.
And once again, welcome back as we're moving right along to that 3 o'clock hour, folks. As promised, returning to the show, the candidate for lieutenant governor running on the Republican line, running with Long Island's favorite son, Lee Zeldin, is Alison Esposito. And I had Alison on just a few weeks ago, and as you know, I spoke quite a bit about the chat that Alison and I had over the air. So many of you had written in and said it was the phrase that was used the most was breath of fresh air, finally moving in the right direction. As you know, Alison was a retired deputy inspector of the 70th Precinct, NYPD, has a long and storied career in law enforcement, and many people looking at crime as the number one issue. Of course, the price of gasoline has kind of usurped that a little bit, but people are still concerned about crime, subway crime, and so on. But let me welcome Alison to the show. Alison, thanks for coming back.
Well, hello, sir. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure. I know when you came on, people who had written in and saying, it doesn't sound like a politician. Sounds like somebody that would be a great lieutenant governor. That's what I heard. Because many times people would say, they'll skirt issues and so on. But you didn't do that the first time you were on. And since that, it's gotten worse, which every day we're treated to some sort of a problem having to do with crime. Now we understand that that's not the only issue in this governor's race. Again, yourself running with Lee Zeldin here from Long Island. But at the same time, this is what the people on Long Island are concerned about. They no longer go to the restaurants in New York City. They stay away from the theater district and so on. So it is an issue. And I know, and I've pointed it out as the number one issue. Now, you have that background. How has it effectuated your campaign as you start now to get down to the June 28th primary and then beyond that in November?
Well, first of all, I couldn't have received a better compliment from your viewers, saying that I don't sound like a politician. And yes, as you know, and as you stated, I'm a cop, and that is who I am, and that is where my heart is. I joined this race. I say now that I'm not going into politics. I'm not going to be a politician. I'm going into government. And I joined Lee Zeldin on this ticket in this administration because it was the same reason I joined the NYPD, because I believe those who cannot protect themselves truly deserve to be protected. And that is the crux of me walking away from the NYPD and coming into this race. You are 1,000% right. Crime is at the forefront of what we are dealing with right now. People don't feel safe. They don't feel safe sending their kids to school, to the local parks. They don't feel safe riding mass transit. They don't feel safe visiting our beautiful cities around the state. Rochester has a surging crime rate. New York City shootings are out of control. We have a problem in our subways where people are being thrown in front of subways. We have multiple stabbings. Crime is at the forefront. When Congressman Zeldin asked me to be his partner in this endeavor, it was because he saw the writing on the wall. He saw that public safety and security will be on the ballot this November. And he decided, in the contrast of Kathy Hochul, who tapped as her vice, as her second, Brian Benjamin, who spent his days running from the law, he tasked an NYPD executive of almost 25 years with law enforcement specific experience that I bring to this, that our endeavor here is to make New York a freer, safer, and cheaper state. It's time we hold criminals accountable for their actions, and we respect the victims that go through these ordeals on a daily basis. It's just unacceptable in this great state.
Right. It seems like that's the message. And I could point to just what happened last year. If you look at the number of elected officials who were running for local office, because last year was a local office, and I point to the district attorney's race in Nassau County, that the Democratic candidate was one of the sponsors of bail reform, was defeated resoundingly. Like 36% of the vote, I think he got, which is like abysmal when you talk about a county like Nassau that has more registered Democrats than it does Republicans. Throughout the state, the bail reform issue, the rules of discovery, defunding the police. This is what people are talking about. Maybe 5 or 10 years ago, Alison, maybe people wouldn't have been talking about crime that much. See, at one point, as you know, because you've had a long career, you could sit back and remember the early days of your career. I think I read you joined around 94. That was the time that New York City was enjoying some of the lowest crime rates ever. And yet we saw that drastic change that has taken place. And I think a lot of it was self-inflicted by policies of what's coming out of Albany. So I guess my point to you and my question to you is that how do you then take the forefront on that? And I know, again, I keep saying there's other issues, but how do you then get involved in that? We have seen lieutenant governors. The only reason they're there is when the governor has to leave in disgrace, like we saw with Spitzer and we saw that with Cuomo. But I see you, from my first interview with you, as something more than that, just waiting for something to happen in order to become governor. How do you then take an active role in a Zeldin administration?
So the short answer to that is I would never be in a position where I wouldn't be in an active role in anything in my life. And when Congressman Zeldin and I sat down and we hashed what the Zeldin-Esposito administration would look like, we hashed it out, I was not a passive partner. My job in this administration is to restore safety and security and bring New York back to its glory. That's the reason Congressman Zeldin tapped me. That's the reason that Congressman Zeldin offered me this partnership and asked me to come on board. And this is not reinventing the wheel. It's not. We know how to fight crime. It is absolutely reckless and reprehensible policies that have been coming out from the left. Cashless bail has to be repealed. We know that has to be repealed. We know that we have to give judges discretion when setting bail. We know we have to make sure that violent crimes are punished and those responsible are held accountable. We know that reckless district attorneys like our Alvin Bragg in Manhattan that refuse to uphold their oath of office and refuse to prosecute crime need to be fired. We need to put New Yorkers first. Again, this is not reinventing the wheel. We know how to fix this. We went through the 80s and 90s and we had ridiculous crime in New York City. We worked for more than 25 years by holding criminals accountable, by enforcing laws and rules and regulations, and by making New Yorkers feel safe. We got to a point where New Yorkers could go run in the park and not worry about it. We got to the point where mass transit was being used in record numbers, but we gave it back. We gave more than 25 years, more than a quarter of a century of work. We gave it back with these policies that are allowing criminals to run the streets. We're not giving our innocent victims, we're not giving our good, hardworking New Yorkers that just want to go to and from work and enjoy mass transit. We're not giving them what they deserve. And our first responsibility is to the good, hardworking people of New York State.
Right. And again, well said, well taken. If you're just joining us, speaking with Lieutenant Governor candidate Alison Esposito, running with Lee Zeldin to become the Lieutenant Governor come January of 2023. You know, when we look at blue states versus red states, a lot of people will say to you, and I'm sure you've heard it, you can't elect Republicans statewide and so on. But then I was looking at what happened in San Francisco. The fact that a solid far left city recalled their DA because the DA wasn't tough on crime. And then you look south in L.A., in Los Angeles, they're going to do the same thing there. You mentioned Alvin Bragg. We don't have recall in New York State, but we have the ability for the governor's office to remove him from office from not doing this. So I would say this year more than ever that we could erase that blue versus red, that Democrat versus Republican. And I think people are going to go more common sense. Your thoughts on that, Alison Esposito?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So I'm traveling the state, and I say to people pretty much on a daily basis, this is not a red wave. This is a common sense wave. This is Democrats, Republicans, independents, and people who have never voted before coming out and saying enough. You have to respect my freedoms. You have to respect my ability to decide what is best for my family and my children in their education. You have to provide, as government, our number one responsibility is to provide public safety, to provide safety for our people, and then get out of their lives and let them live. This is all common sense 101 government stuff. We have people in Albany that forgot they worked for the New York State people. They forgot who they work for. They are a ruling elite, and they are passing laws and policies that just are for their sole benefit, and they don't benefit New Yorkers. Sir, we are absolutely going to win this election. It's going to start June 28th when we vote. Lee Zeldin is in as the Republican candidate. Now, early voting is now with the same machines all the way until it's early in-person voting until June 26th. And then June 28th, we are going to be a united party. You are going to see a resounding shockwave to Albany saying we are coming for your jobs. We are bringing common sense back to Albany. We are bringing ears back to Albany, a place that has been deaf for far too long. And Congressman Zeldin and I will not forget who we work for.
You know, just switching gears just a little bit, we've got the largest budget in the United States. We're the fourth largest state. We've got the largest budget. We see monies going to places that many people in the forgotten middle class don't want to see. Money's going to people that weren't able to collect unemployment or anything like that because they were here not legally. I mean, they were here undocumented individuals getting money from the hardworking taxpayers. People are a little bit upset about that. How do we bring more fiscal responsibility to that, what I would say is an overbloated budget, considering that we're not the largest state, and yet we have the largest budget? In fact, it's number 2 and number 3, Texas and Florida, if you add it up, I think is not even equivalent to what we spent here in New York State. Is that an issue that you have been looking at?
Huge issue. And remember, I'm a cop. So when you talk about a budget that it actually pains me to say a $220 billion budget of wasteful and reckless spending that isn't going to the people that need it, that isn't working to benefit the hard tax-paying, hard-working New Yorkers every day. I ran a precinct for years, and part of it was budgeting and learning that I can do more with less, and learning what needed to be done and what we could do without. The New York State budget, to say it's bloated is an understatement. This is a budget that has to be reevaluated, that has to be looked at. And as Congressman Zeldin says all the time, we have to do without that 3 men in a room or 3 people in a room way of doing the budget and governing. All New York has to have a seat at the table. All of their representatives need to be actively involved in what is good for the New York State budget. You cannot paint all of New York State with the same broad brush. What works in New York City doesn't necessarily work in Rochester. What works in Nassau and Suffolk County doesn't necessarily work in Erie County. We have to make sure that our budget is responsible to those that we answer to, and that's the people of the state of New York.
Do you think it's something, we made reference to it just earlier, but I just want to explore it once again, is redefining the position of lieutenant governor, because it is really, I guess, Albany's best kept secret, or whatever you want to say. I've talking to you now. This is the second time I've spoken with you, and there's a certain energy that comes from you. There's a certain expertise, particularly criminal justice, and how important that is, along with the other issues and so on. Is it a matter of redefining this position so that it becomes more to the public service, to the millions of New Yorkers?
Absolutely. If it must be redefined, if New Yorkers were not aware that their partner in government was the lieutenant governor, they will be now. I plan on taking an incredibly active role. I am not waiting for any direction. Congressman Zeldin and I are partners, and we will work to make sure that this administration benefits everyone in New York State. And to redefine the role of lieutenant governor, so be it. I've always been a little bit, I guess, outside the box anyway. So, let's do it then. Let's reevaluate it. You're going to see when I am elected alongside then Governor Zeldin, you are going to see a different kind of lieutenant governor. Now, Patterson once said, I guess somewhat famously or infamously, that he woke up every morning and just made sure that the governor was alive and breathing. And then he went about his day. That is not my work ethic. I need to get knee deep into this, and I need real solutions and real policies that benefit everyday New Yorkers, that we make sure that we're backing the blue, that we make sure all parents can be involved in their children's education, that we make sure that schooling is the absolute best it can be, whether it's public, private, or homeschooling, that we're setting our children up for the best future they can possibly have. We need to work to make sure that New York State is energy independent. We can safely extract natural resources along that southern tier and bring jobs and prosperity back. There is so many things that we can do. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, I will be reevaluating the role as lieutenant governor, and you will see an active partner, an active, united executive branch coming out of Albany after January 1st.
You know, Alison, we only have a few minutes left, but more on a lighter note, I'm very curious to your perception of traveling around. I love New York. I've lived here my whole life. I've traveled around. Noticed that there are places called Watertown and, of course, Buffalo, Binghamton, that is such a diverse state. I mean, the western tier of New York watches Cleveland, Ohio TV before it watches New York City television.
Yep.
As you're going around the state, we only got a couple of minutes left, but as you're going around the state, do you notice the differences in the diversity of the different regions of the great state of New York?
It's the coolest thing in the world. So, like, youth is wasted on the young. So I grew up in Orange County. I went to SUNY Delhi. All my friends were SUNY schools. I traveled to SUNY schools to check out all the bars and all the towns growing up. I never knew how beautiful New York State was. I am driving this state now, and it's amazing. From the ocean to the lakes to the mountains to it's absolutely beautiful. And yes, it's an incredibly diverse state, which is why it's so imperative that government in Albany realize that it's not one broad brush, that what works for way upstate doesn't work for downstate. And there is a divide. Upstate doesn't feel like they are heard. Nassau and Suffolk feel like, hey, we're not the city. We need different things. We need an administration that recognizes the diversity and beauty in this large, oh my God, I've been traveling it, very large and great state. It's really amazing. And I have been blessed with this opportunity, but it doesn't matter where I go, upstate, downstate, inner city, out of the city, rural, suburban, it doesn't matter. They care about freedom, safety and security, their children's education, the economy. They care about the exact same things. They want their children to be able to get educated properly. They want them to be safe in schools, out of schools, in parks, and they want to be able to decide what's best for their families. With Congressman Zeldin and I, we will give that back to them. Albany had no right infringing on it.
And once again, Alison Esposito. Alison, we got 30 seconds, 20 seconds. How could people reach you?
EspositoForNewYork.com, or you can go to Facebook or Instagram, Esposito for New York, or Alison Esposito, and you can go to Zeldin for New York for all the policies.
Once again, Alison Esposito, thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, sir. Have a great day.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a short break. When we get back, let's talk with Suffolk County Legislator Sarah Anker for a few minutes. Then we're going to take your phone calls, folks. We'll be right back.